Sir, can you walk me through 3 such examples where the companies on the outside were not doing well?
Yeah.
And you bet on those companies,
Yeah.
you were bullish on those companies,
Yeah.
you worked with those companies, and eventually, today they've paid you dividends far beyond people's imaginations.
Yeah. So the first example that I can come up with is a company called HLE Glascoat, which in a way was a group which was unlisted, but they bought a company called Swiss Glascoat, which was listed on the exchanges in India, and they had 100 crores kind of a market cap. Now, it was a very small company, 100 crore would not move the needle for much of the funds. And the reason why we got excited was that the promoter family was one of the friends of my cousin, which I knew them since almost, 7-8 years. And their capability, I knew that how they had built, how they think, how Alap, when he was a young engineer, used to think, and how he could bring that learnings to his own company and build that up, and now that he can do the same thing with the company that he's acquired. And that is where a small company of 100 crores got a valuation of close to $1 billion in the coming 4-5 years.
Wow.
Because they went into adjacencies, they reverse merged their own business with this listed company. So this company was making glass-lined reactors. So they were, the glass-lined reactor is a reactor which pharma and chemical companies use to mix a lot of their chemicals and, maybe store it also. So here is a company which was just, doing a turnover of 40-50 crores. But the point is that when they merged these two entities, they had this lethal combination of a giant which can be a supplier of pharma and chemical plants. Almost 30% of the value chain was dryers, filters and glass line equipments. So all pharma giants or chemical giants had to come to this company whenever they were thinking of a plant. And in India, we were going through this boom of chemicals and pharma, because if you look at Gujarat or Hyderabad, most of these pharma giants were talking about 4x capacity, 5x capacity. Chemical plants were, talking about 10x capacity, because we had a capability in the country regarding these two manufacturing of materials. We thought a player like HLE in the merged form is on the forefront of supplying those critical equipment for this company, for this industry to grow. And that is where there was a time period. Then in 2019, there was a 3 years kind of waiting period. That waiting period increased to 4.5 years in 2021. So the capability they were building, still they could not completely fulfill the needs of the consumer. And that is where Malabar kind of funds came into, other funds came into, when the company's market cap swelled to 3,000-4,000 crores, and it went to almost 8,000-9,000 crores. And the capability of Alap as an engineer was something which drove me to take that bet.
Got it.
And that mindset created an organization which is one of the largest value creators, if you think about in terms of a merger story, that Indian corporate had ever spun.
So you invested in this company when it was valued at 100 crores.
Yeah.
And today it is sitting at a valuation of 8,000 crores.
At the top, it went to around 8,000 crores. Today, it might be around 4,000 crores.
Okay, got it. So, sir, if I have to break down your framework, you first look at a mega trend.
Yeah.
Something like, let's say, PM Surya Ghar Yojana.
Correct.
Which is going to substantially increase the demand for a particular capability in India.
Correct.
So it could be about solar panels or it could be about glass lining equipment. Once you identify that, you go and scout for entrepreneurs or companies who have the capability to service this demand.
Correct.
And once you identify them, then you get into a framework. Then there is another framework which then goes deeper from the entrepreneur all the way to the culture of the company, to the integrity of the company, to the energy of the people who are running the company.
Correct.
And on the basis of that, you decide to invest in a particular company, not on the basis of the numbers, but on the basis of the capability of the company to cater to a future demand.
Correct.
And that is where you've been able to experience hockey stick growth. Is that correct?
Yes, because if I'm betting on the numbers which are already there, why will the market reward me anything?
Yeah.
Because if I'm already betting on a giant like Reliance, which has already created this thousands of crores of profitability, it will not move the needle if they create few thousand more crores of profitability, because they've already been discovered by the market.
Got it. Give me 2 more examples, sir.
So the second company that we bet on is Waaree Energies, which again, if you think of, when we were thinking about that bet, it was in solar where India had no chance to succeed, right? China was the leader in that sector, and China was in a way dominating this space. Almost 90% of the equipment world over were Chinese equipment. And when the idea came to us, everyone again started, including Vivekji. First call, he was saying, we buy panels in Microtech from, Waaree and all these players in the commodities, and why commodities should get any value. But what we observed is that here's an entrepreneur who survived in an industry which was dominated by China, had no profitability or close to zero profitability. He himself went on the verge of, getting drained of all his resources in the company twice. And he sold some other business of his that he had in engineering, valve business, which he sold to a European counterpart, and brought capital to this company to make it survive. That is the passion that he carried for this business. And in COVID, we remember that all the Chinese people had a force majeure clause on supplying to US panels to the US because the shipping cost just went through the roof. So everyone said, we are not supplying. Here is a small company from India living up to the contracts and saying, forget about force majeure, forget about the losses. I am going to supply whatever loss every container that I'm making. And that is where that he stood and delivered, which no other company either in India or China delivered. And that is where he won the trust of, the US counterparts. And this cannot be captured in numbers, right? Because when you talk about the US demand, there were a lot of Indian engineers over there which were working in these EPC companies who were placing orders. They did not have a proper alternative to China for all these years, and hence they were not, maybe putting these orders. And when we talk to them, so the main ingredient over here is generally investors don't take stock of the situation on ground and what is it changing as a trend for the future.
And also to add on the Waaree piece was very important upon that. The Hiteshji's capital allocation and his time of equity raising was very particular because this was an industry not having profits. And that time, if you have a lot of debt on your book, you can be screwed.
Correct.
He was raising the equity in the right time, right? And also doing the allocation at the right time. Whereas investors generally we miss that. We just see numbers to kuch dikh nahi rahe yaar, iski book pe kya invest karenge. Boss, understand the space. Go talk to the founder, go talk to the market, what's happening, and see if the situation is not improving for 1 year also, is there any problem? If the company can survive that tough time, then the good times will come, then it will flourish. And this has happened in Waaree, right? This is happening in Kimball now, right? So,
and the ability that Vivekji is talking about, Hitesh Bhai raised capital of around 1,000 crores without any investment banker being appointed. Without even a rupee of investment banking fees being paid. We raised close to around, 180 crores in the company in 2 rounds. And when I just reached out to one of the family members that, we raised this amount, we're very happy with the investment, but if there can be a fees. So the feedback that I got, we are not charging any fees. I told, why will you charge a fees? You need to pay a fees to us to basically raising this capital. But we were happy with the investment. We did not make any money on the fees, but the investment was such superb that we were very excited and we went ahead. The point is that he was very clear that I don't want these kind of term sheets being written by these big investors and try to dominate of how I want to build my business. I have spent almost 2 decades understanding this business. I don't want a third party to come and explain me that why are you making losses on these containers that you're, shipping out to the US? Because he was building a relationship. He was building a relationship which was going to last. And the point is that relationship helped him to have close to $1 billion in advances to build factories, which now is around 14 gigawatts, which is going to go to 20 gigawatts just in a year's time. And the starting point was just a 500 megawatt factory to this, 20 gigawatt factory spread across US, India. No other giant like Adani could even phantom, doing that. And that is where he started to serve the US market. That was our thesis. India market to commodity hai, yahan pe paisa nahi banega, US mein paisa banega, and Waaree at least will make money out of that. From things turning the table and India policy then going live and ALMM ticking in, where Indian government told that boss, agar aapko India mein panel lagana hai to Indian loge to hi aapko ye benefits milenge. That completely changing the India business for them. So the point is that betting on right things gave unimaginable opportunity in India itself. And now India is talking about energy storage. And Waaree is talking about energy storage. India is talking about green hydrogen. Waaree is talking about green hydrogen. So they have transformers, everything. In fact, that is a beauty about these great founders, again, that I'm repeating at the sake of it, but that is the building blocks, that they find adjacencies and are able to replicate the same success in the other adjacencies.
And also leave money on the table.
Yeah.
All these founders like Hitesh ji and even Kimball, they have always left money on the table for the investors. This is also crucial.
Yeah.
Because if the founder is only taking that, I should have the whole piece of the cake, then the investors, of course, will not back them, right?
Yeah.
Hitesh ji and Kimball, of course, have been doing that, right?
Yeah.
And we have seen other founders also who have been quite successful, that they have to take everybody along in the growth story. That what is also the...
Correct.
Sir, when you entered Waaree at a market cap of 4,500 crores.
Yeah.
And today it is sitting at a market cap of 80,000 crores.
Correct.
So that's almost a 20x return.
Correct.
That's insane. And the last company, sir?
And third company, or I can say again an ecosystem, again with the same mindset that we bet on, was the electronic manufacturing in the country, where there are multiple companies that we bet. But again, China is the leader over there. We cannot compete with China and the other South Asian nations, and we don't have an ecosystem, things like that. But if you look at the Indian imports, the second item after oil was electronics. And that is where the government was framing policies that how we can become a self-sustaining nation in electronics.
How much was the return that you generated from this?
So Aventel would be, at what, 2000% up for us, it's a kind of, multiplier that we've made. But we've been lucky that these companies delivered what we thought, and delivered much more than we thought. See, I did not imagine that Kimball would be doing a EMS so successfully, or would be executing so successfully, or 2,000 crore kind of a business in a single year. It's something very unique that they've built. Maybe something very unique that the order book that came to Waaree, or, HBL getting Kavach orders. This was something which we just hoped. And some things we didn't even hope came out of the blue. But betting on the right set of people and the right set of sector was something at a valuation gave us a lot of returns.
Got it. Sir, if you were to sum up your entire thesis and give out one takeaway to all the investors who are looking for these multi-baggers, what would your research advice be?
So I've always, thought through that, and we've discussed this with my team also, that what is our thesis, what do we bet on, and how do we, come across this serendipity where we come across companies like Kimball or Waaree. And what we figured out that thinking long term and, focusing on creating relationships for the long term is one thing that has helped us a lot. We are never focused in a very myopic way to think at a relationship and approach someone with what profits we are going to make in a quarter or this year or that year. But the most value add has been from relationships like these, and that's how we've started to back companies together. And that's what equity investors today are just focusing on what the listed world is, and they will just go to a company and look at the revenue projections, this, and then invest. They don't go behind the story. Going behind the story is where entrepreneurs come into picture, where a leader in the space can guide you towards that, how he thinks about the business, or some supplier or some value chain guy can tell you about what the credibility of that person is. And that we use a lot in the entrepreneur circle that we've built to frame that whether this company has a good future, has good relationships, has good ethics, and has good culture or not. Which in a way, very few, if you look at any research note which is penned out by, you have 200 companies in India who do wealth management, or there are maybe 500 brokers. All brokerage reports talk about this is the current market price, this is our target. I in my journey have never able to figure out how I can decide a target of a company, because I just enter into from that learning experience that how this business is right now, what it can become few years down the line, and there's a journey that we are going together with no target in mind. And that is what I guess investors should always look at. Thinking long term, not having targets in mind, enjoying the journey and trying to figure out what they're betting on, whom they're betting on is the right person or not. And that has been, again, a theory that we have been, being with Kimball, being able to learn even more. That's why I'm saying both side of the table have value added us a lot, because before Kimball, we just used to think that we are in the right direction or not. After Kimball, we get this validation that yes, thinking about these things do matter. These are the things that we need to now incorporate more in our thesis when we are picking the next investment, because we are wanting to add more value rather than just money. Betting on just stock prices is not what we want to stand for.
Sure.
that is what, as a learning outcome, I believe investors or even youngsters can have when they're thinking about business relationships, about investing, about anything in their life. Thinking long term is one thing that I've learned from Buffett and Munger, and which is a learning lesson for my life that I keep on wanting to explore more.
Understood. Ayush, the last question that I want to ask you is about the controversy about smart meters. And Teju just told me that there are people in Gujarat who are complaining that their bill was about 6,000 rupees and now it's suddenly jumping up to 60,000 rupees. So that's wild, right? And that defeats the purpose of having a smart meter, which is to measure the power consumption accurately. So how do you respond to that?
See, a couple of things. One, such a mass rollout of smart metering or a replacement drive has never happened in the world ever, right? In India, we're replacing 150,000 smart meters daily. So definitely there has been a lot of challenges, there have been a lot of mistakes, and every entity in this particular, or every stakeholder in this particular game has learned from that. And today, the solution has matured. Earlier, there were so many cases that you were getting energy bill of a different consumer. So there's a meter number, there's a serial number like 1, 2, 3, and your consumer number. Every accounting happens, every energy billing happens on your consumer number, whereas the meter is sending data on 1, 2, 3. If the mapping is wrong, so you will be getting the energy bill of some other consumer, and some other consumer will be getting it from someone else, right?
So you're saying that the systems will get better with time?
Yes, the system is getting better with time, right? So the example that you're giving us in Gujarat, what has happened initially was as soon as the smart metering was implemented, they had added all the errors, all the previous undue charges into the smart metering account at the first dot itself. If you're not able to pay that, then your electricity gets disconnected.
Got it.
So that, and it was just for around 1% or 2% of the consumer. But that 1% or 2% of the consumer spreads like anything. That message spreads like anything, that after installing the smart meter, the bill inflates. Whereas the measurement is far better than previous one. So it is way more accurate, it's way more secure.
Understood. Vivek sir, do you have a final word to give out to the investors?
Yeah, so in my learning, in my experience, I'm sharing from the experience that you have to be patient, you have to look at the right space, and be with the entrepreneur with some time. Give him the space. Any business has a sine wave kind of thing, it can go up and go down. Just do not see, okay, this quarter is bad, let's exit. And also when an equity investor is listening to the con calls, because a smaller investor may not have the ability to connect to the founder, but he's listening to the con calls. Understand the tone behind it. The tone changes a lot as the company progresses. And if you're right in there, you will make a hell lot of money. And as we told in the earlier thing also, that money is the byproduct. The process should be right, which is about the Gita also. Gita also talks about the same thing. Focus on the process. Results will follow you.
Got it.
That's what I believe.
Thank you so much, sir. Hi guys, if you loved watching this clip and if you want to do a deep dive into the podcast, we've mentioned the link in the description. So click that link, watch that podcast and take notes. Thank you for watching and subscribe for more clips.